What's going on, Gamecocks fans? I'm former South Carolina safety Matt O'Brien, and today we're going to be taking an extended look at the 2025 wide receiver position as the group heads into spring ball practice.
First, let's take a look at the personnel. Gamecocks lost Dale Von Campbell and Gage Larvadan, both of whom only spent one season in Columbia after transferring in last year, and totaled just over 500 yards and one touchdown between them on the season. So we're not necessarily talking about a lot of production being lost that needs to be replaced. Next, the incoming recruiting class is going to be a big one for Coach Mike Ferry in terms of quantity and quality, and I'll be breaking down this group later in this video. It could be an all-time great one for the Gamecocks. Lastly, in terms of returning wide receiver personnel, 4 of the top 6 guys are set to return, so the expectation is to have a solid foundation and rotation to start the spring. But each of them are looking to take a leap forward as not a single one reached the 400-yard mark in 2024. Clicking into the numbers, we see 29% of all pass yards went to Joshua Simon and Rocket Sanders, while over half of the total passing touchdowns went to tight ends and running backs overall. The emphasis on these groups in the passing game was important, with the freshman quarterback needing the short and middle safety valves in the pass game. In the middle, Dale Von Campbell is perhaps the biggest what-could-have-been player for this year's team. The transfer was plagued by injury in 2024, but when he was on the field, he was explosive. His 26 yards per catch was the most in the team by almost 10 yards more than the second place Jared Brown. Lastly, we have to shout out coaches, boosters, and fans for NIL initiatives that have no doubt played a huge hand in bringing back most of the team, including 4 of the top 6 receivers from last season. So let's take a look at the top 4 guys, led by Nyck Harbor. Harbor really showed growth in 2024, going from occasional flashes of brilliance to being a top-tier receiver by end of season. You simply don't see many receivers like Harbor, and I feel like he's going to be shooting for a 1,000-yard campaign in 2025. Mazeo Bennett came on strong as a true freshman last year and showed an advanced understanding of route running, and he should be considered the firm number 2 throughout the offseason. The next 2 guys are my headliners for off-season personnel battles to watch. Upperclassman transfer Jared Brown is a gadget player who would benefit from more 11 personnel sets where he can move around and exploit matchups, while Dre Jacobs is a redshirt sophomore who's going to look to compete on a consistent basis to stay ahead of a talented group of incoming freshmen. The key thing that stands out here is that production was not strong for the group in 2024. In fact, if you take all of the yards on the screen and add them up, it's still less than SEC's leading receiver, Andrew Armstrong, at Arkansas. And this was as much to do with the wide receiver group as it did a redshirt freshman quarterback in LaNorris Sellers' development and coaching decisions. You can see the Gamecocks ranked near the bottom or middle in key stats on the season, with attempts being a key one to highlight, as fewer attempts meant less to go around for the wide receivers.
Here we see how South Carolina wide receivers had to share the pie with a highly productive group of running backs and tight ends, led by Joshua Simon, who was a matchup nightmare in the red zone. A big part of why the Gamecocks receivers had to share the pie with backs and ends is because of how much South Carolina leaned on 12 personnel sets in 2024. Breaking down 12 versus 11 personnel at a high level here, 12 features 1 running back, 2 tight end, 2 wide receivers, and is generally better for the run, particularly with a running quarterback like LaNorris Sellers, while also being a bit more limiting downfield in the passing game. If you're the OC and are looking to run more 12 personnel, how versatile are your tight ends in the passing game? Conversely, if you're looking to run 11 personnel, can your receivers block consistently for the run game? So for the Gamecocks offensive coaches, this is the main question they'll be asking as they self-scout in the spring. While the answer here may have been no in 2024 with how well Michael Smith came on to support Joshua Simon at tight end, I think there will be a change in the tides over the next season toward leaning more on the wide receivers. And here's what that room will look like in 2025. This is 14 guys deep, and all are going to battle to create more 11 personnel opportunities. It's crazy to think that Nyck Harbor is one of the oldest players here, and he will go into spring as the number 1 X receiver, with Mazeo Bennett being the primary Z receiver for the team. From there, I see tough competition across the board, but think that ultimately how good the true freshmen are and how ready to play they are will determine the fate of the 2025 passing attack. For the 2025 class, we have 6 scholarship guys plus a preferred walk-on, and the Gamecocks coaches couldn't have done a better job overall. Getting right into strengths, 6 scholarship recruits gives coaches a class with depth and a higher success probability. From an identity standpoint, the Gamecocks owned wide receiver in-state and regional recruiting and will help make South Carolina a program known for wide receivers moving forward. 5 of the commits in this class are already on campus, and I guarantee at least one of these players makes a challenge to start because of their development in winter and spring ball. Lastly, versatility is a big asset, and I see the group split in half between receiver X and Z positions, with a couple of guys who could play any spot depending on personnel sets. Starting with the X spot, we see some key traits. This receiver needs to have the length and strength to beat SEC corners off the line of scrimmage, to be able to win one-on-one situations and have a high catch success rate. The QB needs to know this is an automatic completion when he throws the ball to this receiver. This play embodies an X receiver as Alshon Jeffrey beats Drake Kirkpatrick, a future NFL veteran, and comes up with a big catch down the sideline back in 2010. Creating separation was key, as is speed. And we're talking sub 4.5 40-yard dash fast. And this is not just to benefit this receiver. You can see on this route that Nyck Harbor's speed makes the safety lose his focus and coverage and forget to cover Mazeo Bennett on this touchdown. Alshon was the prototypical X receiver for the teams that I played on. Nyck Harbor has shown he's coming into form, and I think there's a reason to believe the Gamecocks will find at least 1 to 2 players to live up to this standard in the 2025 class. And here they are, Malik Clark, Jordon Gidron, and Donovan Murph. Malik Clark is this class's highest rated overall player, and in my opinion, should have been a 5-star recruit. Clark is an extremely fluid athlete with nice body control and displays the ability to high point the ball. What I think separates Clark from other top recruits in the country is his second gear speed. Most top receivers are fast, but Clark's got another level. You can see here when he tracks down the ball, and this is big time for a guy of his size at just over 6'2", 185 pounds. Next, Jordon Gidron I also think could have been rated higher, but he classed up for going his senior season. Gidron shows very sound and purposeful route running and displays a rare combination of speed and power, which will become more evident as he grows. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Gidron gets up to 220 pounds and close to 6'3" in a couple of years. This is someone who defensive backs will not want to try to tackle with a full head of steam. Donovan Murph rounds out the X receiver commits. He's a little bit shorter than the other two, but has really good strength and possession skills. He shows great movement and body control when going up for the catch. And what I like most about Murph and think could ultimately be his best weapon is his versatility. His ability to play in the slot and outside at X could force coaches to utilize 11 personnel almost exclusively over the next few years. Typically, a school would be happy just getting one of these guys, but South Carolina got all 3, and this is a tremendous job by Coach Fury and staff. Switching over from the X receiver to the Z receiver, we do see some different traits. Versatility first and foremost. Athletically and mentally, the Z needs to be able to play in multiple personnel sets, something that Mazeo Bennett excelled at as a freshman in 2024 as he became the go-to Z over the course of the season. He needs to be able to run a diverse route tree and get yards after the catch, turning a short gain into a first down to help keep the chains moving for the offense. And lastly, being quick enough to win in small spaces against man and zone coverage and knowing when to sit or push it. The Z needs to be able to play off or on the line, and while often called the slot, this player needs to play out wide and be so much more depending on their own skills and offensive scheme. For the 2025 class, there are 3 clear Z receivers, starting with Lex Cyrus, who reminds me a little bit of Jared Brown. Just with burner-level speed, as he was the Pennsylvania state champ in the 100-meter, he could be the fastest player in the entire class for the Gamecocks. What I like most about him is he can run a full route tree, and he shows the ability to attack the football and win despite smaller stature. This was a big pickup over Penn State in recruiting. Next up, Brian Rowe is a slight, extremely smooth runner whom is a natural yak machine. He has a good balance of speed, agility, and natural athleticism. He also shows the ability to jump through to the gym, so to say. I think Rowe could be one of the more underlooked recruits overall in this class, and that's really just because there are some bigger names that came in at the position. One thing to watch is if Rowe could get a look at returner early in his career. He's just someone who seems to have a knack for the big play with the ball in his hands. The last scholarship Z receiver commit in this class is Jayden Sellers, of course the brother of LaNorris. The relationship is apparent while watching highlights as they have a similar wind-up toy style of running when they get to the perimeter. Sellers is explosive, a strong runner, and versatile, and he loves to block. Depending on his development, I could even see Sellers getting a look at all-purpose back, and I know he could do well at Wildcat out of the gate. Not highlighted here is recent preferred walk-on commit Jackson Rep, who also displays strong Z qualities. Quickness, yak, route diverse, Rowe, Cyrus, Sellers, they've got it. And they've also got a rising star in Mazeo Bennett to learn behind. Speaking of Bennett, he was rated 90.23 in the On3 composite system last class, which is of course highly rated. But how about the 2025 class of recruits? The Gamecocks have 5 receivers in this class with a higher rating than Mazeo Bennett had last year. These 5 are Clark, Murph, Rowe, Gidron, and Cyrus. This is the best wide receiver class for the Gamecocks since at least 2007, and is definitely among the best in the entire country in 2025. Here's a look at other notable classes across the country, and you'll notice that while some have a 5-star, none have 5 or more rated 4-star or better like the Gamecocks have. Texas and Georgia are, of course, crushing it across all positions, including receiver. A&M remains an enigma, but has greatly benefited from the NIL era and has a strong receiver class. Ole Miss actually has a very similar class to the Gamecocks with 1 transfer among the ranks. Ohio State, my pick for wide receiver U in the modern era, is strong again and actually has a 5-star from my high school in Quincy Porter. And then Clemson, another wide receiver U candidate in the modern era, oddly having 0-5 or 4-star recruits in the class, which is indicative of both how the Gamecocks beat them in-state in recruiting at the position and feeling confident in the current underclassmen on their roster. Still, 0-5 or 4-star recruits at wide receiver is strange for the Clemson Tigers. Looking ahead to spring ball, here's what I'm going to be watching most closely at wide receiver. How much does the offensive identity under Coach Shula start to take shape? How much will the unit rely on 11 versus 12 personnel? This will directly affect the amount of receivers who can get reps in spring ball practice. Within the position, who's going to win the backup spots behind Nyck Harbor at X and Mazeo Bennett at Z? Which freshmen stand out in the spring, knowing there are 5 already on campus ready to compete? Within the wide receiver position again, how much do we hear from coaches about guys being able to create separation and block in the run game? These are traits I expect are going to be at a premium for winning playing time for Coach Shula. And then lastly, transfers. You saw the list of current players on roster. This is a stocked wide receiver room, which unfortunately could mean we see a transfer or 2 after spring ball wraps up. It's just part of the business and is especially top of mind as the coaches brought in 6 players at the position. I also wouldn't be surprised if there are transfer ins to be on the radar heading into summer as well, but we'll see how it shakes out, and a lot of it will come down to how well the group performs and which guys step up among the freshman class. As we kicked it off, there are a ton of fun headlines to watch in this 2025 wide receiver group. Who's going to step up? Who's going to step out? We'll see in a few weeks as spring ball takes shape. Thank you all for watching this extended breakdown. I appreciate it if you could all leave your comments, thoughts below. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.